All right, guys, welcome back to TCI headquarters. Gosh, it's hard to believe it's November. They remember November, David, so we're going to remember this November.
One way or the other.
That time of year. Tuesday Tiger Talk coming your way. Going to recap what we heard yesterday, what we heard today. Davis, let's start with yesterday. I know you wrote some stuff yesterday, and I think we ran some of it yesterday, some of it this morning.
Yeah.
Both coordinators yesterday. Let's start with probably the guy that most folks were most interested in hearing from, which was Coach Streeter talking about the quarterback situation.
Yeah, so, basically, I mean, nothing's really changed. It's been more talk about just how DJ has sort of mentally responded to the way things transpired against Syracuse. And, it's funny, even Dabo was saying today during his press conference that, it feels like DJ is in a much different place than mentally, at least, than where he was a year ago, where, from really that Georgia game on, the offense just sort of continued to gradually lose confidence in what they were doing. And, they said, they don't worry about him a whole lot. He's responded the way they had hoped he would during the bye week of practice. And, so now it's just a matter of, they sound a lot like they did back in, the preseason media circuit of he's just got to go out there and do it now, he had a bad game and, it's funny. Dabo said, the Steph Curry analogy was maybe the wrong one. Yeah. So he said Steph Curry goes 2 for 25.
Had to adjust the stats a little bit.
So, but he's a human being, and had a rough game, and so now it's just okay. Was that an outlier, or does that become more of that's something you have to worry about? Because this Notre Dame team is. Well, they're not great, at least in my opinion. They're not a great team. If you go on the road up there and turn the ball over 4 times, that's probably a game you're going to lose.
Absolutely.
So, you got to go out there and do it now. And, DJ, it's funny. DJ, always, whenever you talk to him, he was this way last year when there was so much outside noise and criticism of the way not only he was performing with the offense as a whole, he's just very much like, hey, man, I don't think about it. I don't worry about it. I just sort of go out there and do my thing. And so it's very I think he has a good approach toward it, a good view on it. So, we'll see what happens on Saturday night.
Well, what we heard from Streeter yesterday, what we heard from Dabo last night on his radio show, some caller called in and said, hey, what's the deal with Cade? What's the plan for him this week? Well, the plan's the same thing it's been all season, Yeah. I think they tried to get him a little more ready during the bye week, but the plan is just, had a good week of practice. He's ready to go if they need him, but, DJ's going to be the guy, and as you said, it's going to, the talking time is almost over.
Yep.
We've heard a lot of talking now. It's going to be up to how do you perform out there. Goodwin, obviously, talked yesterday as well. I think one of the themes for him was just, this thing's going to be one up front. Our guys need to be ready to have a nasty game.
Yeah, that's been sort of the main theme from all the coaches this week is just, you better be ready for a very physical game because Notre Dame is different from every other team that they've seen just in terms of how frequently they run the ball. That's what Notre Dame wants to do because Notre Dame lost its starting quarterback early in the year with the season into injury, so they're playing with a backup, trying to help that guy out as much as possible, and they've got they lean heavily on a 3-back rotation, and they'll go 12, 13, sometimes even 14 personnel, in some jumbo and goal line situations. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if you see Clemson come out in some bear front, stuff and try to because I think this is going to be a telephone booth game, if you will. So you got to it's. Dabo talked about it. Wes Goodwin talked about it. There's a whole lot of trickeration with Notre Dame. Like they're gonna come with the power, the counter, the zone, zone.
And who are they gonna throw it to?
The tight end, who just happens to be an All-American. Yeah. So, that's that was a lot of the talk with Wes was just making sure you have the right mindset going into practice, but also he was talking about 2 things that he feels like this defense their issues right now. At least the last 2 games specifically was the missed tackles and run fits, which you don't hear a whole lot about when you think about a Clemson defense. But that's they've had a lot of missed tackles the last couple games, and I don't know. Wes sort of asked, why is that the case? But then he said he feels like there's a lot of it is because of the guys that are sort of some of the young guys that are just in their first year as a starter, and some of the new guys that they're rotating in. But you're 8 games into the season now. That's something that I don't know if that should be as big of an issue at this point as it is. So that we'll see if they've made some progress in correcting some of that come Saturday night.
Well, one of the big things, the bye week came in a good time from just health perspective. I think we expect to see Carter back. I think Carter's going to be huge with that tight end we talked about.
Yep.
He could be a big part of trying to cover him and solve that problem. And also, him and Simpson both, you can move them everywhere. The week off was huge for Xavier, who's just, it's really just a pain issue, getting through enough weeks to get that pain completely behind him. And, Dabo talked a little bit about Brian and his situation, just needs to get in better football shape. And so I think they're kind of hoping that both of those guys will come and play their best football here in November.
Yeah, and that's a thing, too, is that I think, coaches talked about this bye week coming at the perfect time. You hear that a lot from coaches, particularly later in the year. But for Clemson specifically, you mentioned Brian Brzee and Xavier Thomas still coming off, working their way back to, sort of trying to get back to their old form, so to speak. They've been out for most of the season, and Brian obviously been in and out of the season for a couple different, or in and out of games for a couple different reasons. So they're still trying to get caught up to speed. And then, Kobe Pace is a guy that sounds like he's close. Dabo said he didn't think it'd be this week, probably next week against Louisville when he'll come back. So he's gonna probably miss this fourth straight game, but they're gonna get him back in the fold soon. So I think that was a big deal for them to have that bye week, just with some of the key injuries that they have had.
Well, and yesterday we heard future Coach Venables, a.k.a. Tyler Venables. Sounds a lot like his dad, but, he talked a lot about what the defense needs to do. Sounds like he's in a little bit different space with his confidence level this year and right now than he was before. Yeah, and
it helps when he's not falling off mopeds. And,
or banging his head on
the car and mopeds. But, yeah, he had some – I think he put a social media post, just showed pictures of his face after he fell off, and it was big cuts and bleeding. And Dabo talked about that a little bit today. Like, not only did he have that, but he had some concussion-like symptoms, I guess, that kept him out of the Syracuse game. But I think he's quietly been one of their better players. Nobody really talks about Tyler Venables at safety. You always think of Makuba and Jalen Phillips and R.J. Mickens. I think they've made some of those more splash plays for them. But I think Tyler's been as steady as they've had back there, just in terms of assignments, and a guy that's experienced and been around the program for a while and knows what he's doing on the back end. Has a pretty good idea with a pretty good defensive mind in his dad, so that he can lean on from time to time. So yeah, I think he's a very underrated part of this defense.
Well, today we heard from Parks, going back to the phone booth you talked about. He's going to be a big part of that. Talked about his transition to guard and how he's getting his, kind of body there. He likes playing with his hand in the dirt a little bit. And, we talked a lot about Notre Dame wanting to run the ball with DJ's issues last game. I expect we're going to see Clemson come in and try to hand it to Shipley and Maffa.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think the way they've ran the ball the last two games have been really encouraging. And I think some of that has had to do, and even coaches and players have talked about it, Florida State and Syracuse. Syracuse played the 3-down line. They played the 3-3-5, and then Florida State, the way they sag off and try to drop into coverage and try to stop the run with their front four. It was like, they were begging us to run the ball. We had to run the ball to be effective, but still, I don't think consistently we've seen them run the ball as well this season as they had the last two games. And Notre Dame's okay. I mean, statistically, they're okay. I wouldn't say they're great at it, but I do think because this passing game has, for whatever reason, has lost some of its explosiveness in recent weeks. And then obviously with DJ having the turnover field game he had last week, I do think they need to be able to run the ball the same way, stay ahead of the chains, because I think if Notre Dame's able to keep them in second and third and long situations, the way this passing game's performing right now, that could be problematic. So I definitely think you need to, if you're Clemson, just continue to have success on the ground.
Yep, and DJ talked yesterday. Sounds like he's confident that things are going to be different. We talk a lot about the starts, and Clemson's going to need to throw the ball some.
Yeah,
they're not just going to be able to line up and let Notre Dame put everybody in the box and run the ball all day long. They're going to have some semblance of a passing game, and I think it's going to be important that they have a little bit of success there early with DJ's confidence.
Yeah, no, I agree, and you got to get Bo Collins back involved.
Yep.
I mean, Dabo talked about, all the other coaches have talked about this week, but Dabo sort of brushed it off like, well, we've tried to get him the ball, but there's been PI, or we've just sort of missed a route here or there. But that's your best, in my opinion, that's probably their most talented overall receiver. Second leading receiver on this team, who's such a big part of what they did the first 4 or 5 games, hasn't had a catch in the last 2 games. And so you got to find a way to, and Brandon Streeter admits, like, we got to get him the ball some more. We got to find some ways to make sure we get him the ball. He's one of the top playmakers on this offense, and that's obviously been I don't think I think there's a correlation there.
Yep.
I mean, hasn't had any catches, and also the passing game falling off. I think that's related to an extent. So you got to find a way to get him the ball.
Yeah, and Bo talked yesterday and handled it great and said, hey, I just need to block. I'll block. He's the ultimate team player. So those are some of the highlights from a couple days of interviews. Huge game. We are headed up to South Bend to cover the game, and excited about that. I've been up there a couple times to cover baseball. I did not go last time because of all the COVID stuff. We played in football. Davis,
I've never
assuming
been there.
this is your first trip for football, so should be a great trip. We're gonna have everything covered all weekend for you, and this kind of doesn't count in the conference play, but Clemson can't afford to have any slips. The rest of the way. So huge game, and Tigers they're gonna probably need to. Dabo talked today about they haven't played their a complete game yet. They may need a complete game.
Good point. Absolutely. I mean, the playoff selection committee, they're humans. They're not robots.
Mm-hmm.
You can't sit there and say that the eye test doesn't matter to those guys. And Clemson have not. I don't think they've looked all that dominant this year at really any point. So
they have for quarter here and quarter there,
but you
not
just got to be able to put it
game.
together for four quarters, and I think that's important for them to do that at some point over the last month of the regular season.
All right, guys, stay tuned to Clemson Insider. We'll have everything covered all week up to the game, and a ton of stuff for you guys headed our way from South Bend this weekend. Hope everybody enjoys the week, and stay tuned to TCI for the most complete coverage of Clemson football.